Since we're talking about operating systems, I thought I'd show you a cute little clip about the fun things with Microsoft.
Plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you put in a new device. And it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build, whoa. Moving right along. That must be why we're not shipping Windows 98. Absolutely. Absolutely.
There are actually more than one operating system. And so we're going to experience 3 operating systems side by side by side. We're going to talk about, or we're going to experience or play with Windows. You should be very, very familiar with Windows. And then we're going to compare it to DOS, the DOS operating system, and we're going to compare it to Linux. Those 3 side by side. And so the first one that we need access to is Icarus. So hopefully you're in the process or already have pulled up Icarus. It requires PuTTY. The instructions for signing into Icarus, if you have not done this yet, I'm going to make sure that the hostname in PuTTY is icarus.cs.weber.edu, that it is on port 22, and then I am going to open it. This is going to open up a Linux box that we're going to be typing our commands in. We're going to see that Linux is a command line, or at least this version, Ubuntu is a command line interface, which means that there is a box that I'm going to type commands in. And so I'm going to type in my username and password. It will mirror my username, but it will not mirror my keystrokes as I type in my password. If it works, cross our fingers, if it works, this is what it should look like. So the second thing that we're going to compare it to is DOS, which means that I need a DOS box. I have my Icarus session running here, and I'm going to compare it to a DOS. So I'm going to click on the Start button. And I'm going to type in CMD, which is short for command. I'm looking for a command box. Type in CMD. And when I see the cmd.exe, I'm going to press that. This is going to give me a DOS box. It looks remarkably like the Linux box. It is also a command line interface. So I have DOS open. I should have Icarus open. And the last one that we need is Windows. And so again, I'm going to click on the Start button, and I'm going to go to Windows Explorer. This is going to be a graphical user interface, one that you should be very, very familiar with. So these are the 3 operating systems that we're going to experiment with today. We're going to compare them together and see how they fare. So as I said before, DOS and this version of Ubuntu are both command line interfaces. It's called a command line interface because you have to type in commands. And one of the things that's interesting about a command line interface, and the command is, first of all, you have to know what the command is. Second of all, you have to know how to spell it to be able to effectively use a command line interface. So let's do a comparison between DOS and Linux and Windows. So the first thing that we would do if you got a new hard drive, the first thing that we would want to do is we would want to partition the drive. If you have a brand new hard drive and you want to partition the drive, think of it for a minute as if you were a contractor or a land developer. You would go buy a 10-acre property or a piece of land, and if you're going to build houses on it, you're probably going to divide it up into multiple lots, maybe 1 acre or half-acre or quarter-acre lots. So you have this piece of land that you want to divide up into the individual lots. The same thing happens when we have a hard drive. If you have a 500 gig or a 2 terabyte hard drive, there's a good chance that when you first install that brand new hard drive that you don't want it to remain 2 terabyte in size. Maybe you want to divide it up into 4 500 gig groups instead of leaving it at 1 or 2 terabytes. And there's some reasons why you might want to break it up. One of the reasons, we talked about the fact that there is random access, that I can store files randomly around a storage medium. If I have 2 terabytes of wide open space and it is randomly storing a divided file, that is a lot of territory for it to cover. That means that my hard drive, my manual hard disk drive, that read-write head is moving back and forth across a huge amount of space. And so it can cause defragmentation. Now, the newer versions of the operating system automatically run the defrag at the end of, or once a week or something like that. And so it should not become nearly as defragged as it would have in the past. Another one of the reasons why you might want to partition or break it up into smaller drives or smaller pieces is so that if you are backing up your data, maybe you have a 500 gig for all your operating system and all of your program files. Maybe you have a 500 gig drive that you break it up into or partition for maybe all of your photos or all of your homework assignments or all of the documents that are going to be changing, so that you can kind of organize and segment. If you're going to back up your hard drive, which you should, I would prefer not to back up my operating system and all of my program files, because I still have all of that programs available to me. I have the installation disk or the installation files that I use. So what I really only want to back up are my document files, the ones that have actually changed, the ones that frequently change. And so if I partition it into separate drives, it can give me some organization. Let's see the commands that we're going to be running through. On page 337 in your book, let's look at the command syntax. We're going to, as we move through this chapter and the commands that are in the chapter, we're going to see that there is a certain syntax that's being used. The bold words are required. The words that are italicized are going to be replaced with specific information. The words in the square brackets are optional. They are called switches, and they are optional. For instance, when you format a DOS drive, I can give it a volume name by using the / or the /V switch. If I want to use to format a new drive in Linux, I would use the -B switch. So there are optional, just like doing our SQL commands. We found out that order by is optional, and that where clause is also optional. They're not required. There's also optional commands in these operating systems. We're also going to find out that DOS and Windows are not case sensitive, that Linux is, and so we'll find out what that means and how it plays out as we manipulate some things here. So I'm going to take my hands off of my keyboard so I don't accidentally repartition the hard drive that is sitting in front of me. If I was in Windows or DOS, that command is fdisk. If I am in Unix, it is a lowercase f, disk. That is the command that I would use, that I would type into my command line if I wanted to repartition or partition a brand new hard drive. And I could give it the size of each one of the disks that I wanted to partition it into. Generally, the very first drive that I create is the C drive. And it is going to, I have one single physical drive in my machine, and if I divide it up, let's say into 4, C, D, E, and F, the first one is going to be the boot drive. This is where I'm going to put my operating system. This is the first drive that it's going to look to boot from. The other 3 are going to be called logical drives. The first would be called physical. C would be the physical drive. Then D, E, and F would become logical drives. If I had a CD-ROM in there, my first drive would be C, my CD-ROM would be D, and then it would name my logical drives F and G. So it just runs through the alphabet, looking at the drives that are already attached, like floppy drives or disk drives, or I guess in theory if you had a jump drive plugged in at the time, it gives it a name, a drive letter, when you plug it in. Once I have partitioned it, and I should say that partitioning a disk is going to erase everything on it, but we have already found out that when I delete things on a disk, that they can be recoverable. So once as a developer, I have taken my 10-acre plot of land, I've decided I'm going to sell it, or I'm going to break it up into half-acre lots, and now I have my half-acre lots. The next thing that I need to do is to prepare each one of those half-acre lots to build a house on, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to survey, and I'm going to draw the little orange lines on it, and I'm going to cut down a tree, or I'm going to dig up this rock. I'm going to bring in some more land to level it, bring in dirt, level it out. I'm going to prepare each one of those half-acre lots for built on. So once I have partitioned my physical drive into potentially logical drives like C, D, E, and F or something like that, then I'm going to format each and every single one of those logical drives. And I'm going to do that using the command format. So in Windows, if I wanted to format a drive, I could select a drive. Here, let's see if we can format my jump drive. No, I'm not going to do it. If I right-click on the drive, one of the options, I'm not even going to go near it because I have managed to delete stuff and reformat stuff I shouldn't. So there's a command in here that says format. So you right-click on the drive that you want to format, and this allows me to prepare it, to put a file system on it. We talked about file systems in Chapter 10, so probably NTFS or a version of a file system on that drive so that it can be organized And then if it's the C drive, then I could also put operating systems on it and make it a bootable disk or a bootable drive. In DOS, if I wanted to format a drive, I would just type in the command format. So let's come over here into command, and I would type in the command format. DOS is not a case-sensitive language. I would put the command format, and then I would follow that by a drive letter. I'm not going to put a drive letter in here because, once again, I don't want to format anything, so I'll backspace that off. In Linux, if I wanted to format a drive, I would use the same command. I would use format in format followed by a drive letter, C, D, E, or F, the drive that I wanted, the logical drives I've just created. If I wanted to do it for floppies, it would be FD format, fixed disk format, FD format, followed by a drive letter. But one thing we want to talk about is help. Every single one of the operating systems has a way for us to get help. So how do I access help in the 3 different operating systems? Let's start with Windows. If I wanted to access help in Windows, all I have to do is click the little question icon in the top right-hand side of the window. And Windows help is contextual in nature. That means depending upon where I am and where I am sitting, it will give me help based upon the context or the place that I'm sitting. So right now, because I'm sitting on files and folders, it's going to give me context on how to go about working with files and folders. It also allows me to search help, so I can type in keywords here. You should be very familiar with the help in Windows. In DOS, I can also type in the command in DOS is help, H-E-L-P, but then I have to tell it what I want help with. Well, let's see if we can get help with format. When I type in help and then a command that I would like help with, it is going to bring up information about that particular command. So it's going to show me how to use that command, and then it's going to show me, remember I said that we have bold letters and we have italicized and we have things in braces to indicate whether or not they're optional. So italicized things are going to be replaced with actual information. The things in the braces are going to be optional, which means they are switches. And so it shows me that I have a variety of switches, optional commands that are available with format. The definition, format's a disk for use with Windows. The format command, it shows me a variety of ways that I can use it, and then it shows me a list of all the switches. If I wanted to get help on something in Linux, I'm going to type in the word man, M-A-N, M-A-N. This is actually short for manual. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring up a page in a manual. Think for just a minute of opening up a book, a manual, and flipping to the correct page. And then I have to give it the name of a command. How about fdisk format? Let's see if we can find the help, the manual page in the manual on the fdisk format. So once again, it's going to give me a description of it. It says it does a low-level format of a floppy disk. The device is usually one of the following. And then I can page down to move through the pages of the manual. I can page up. I can see that there are optional switches. Instead of using the /, they use a dash. So it looks like I can also give it, or I can display version information. When I am done reading the pages in the manual, I'm going to have to escape or leave the manual. And it says down at the bottom that I can type in Q to quit. If I type in the letter Q, it's going to take me out of the manual back to the root directory.